Hi, I'm Robert, and today I'm going to take this image from here to here, all in Lightroom. Last time I was at Shoreline Park, I had one of the best sunsets I had ever seen. This time I didn't have such luck, but using Lightroom, I'm still able to turn around this image. Let's get started at the bottom and work our way up. Double check we're on the current version. For now, we're going to skip vignetting, but we might return. Let's press Constrain Crop. This image looks straight, but I want to fix the vertical lines in these buildings here. So let's go to vertical. Now that we have our grid up, we can see they're a little bit off. So let's bring it up just slightly. And now you can see all of the lines are straight up and down and not leaning backwards. Let's continue up, remove chromatic aberrations, and enable profile corrections. I check these boxes for all of my images. Now we're going to do my standard sharpening routine. 100 of sharpening and applying a mask. Hold down Alt to apply the mask. Let's sharpen everywhere except for the sky. Moving up, we're going to skip the color panel for now. Go to the basic panel. This image looks a little dark, so I'm going to bring the exposure up just a little bit. Now let's open this image up. We're going to bring the highlights down and the shadows up. It's a bit high on the shadows, so I'm going to back it down. We'll start with 65. Now we'll set our white point and our black point, which also will set our exposure and our contrast. So let's bring the white point up. We'll go to about 15, and black we'll bring down. We're clipping, so we'll back it off. So we'll go to about 20. So this is our base edit, and now we can do our fine tuning. Let's work on the sky first. Grab a graduated tool. Let's pull it down over the sky. We're going to go down here to range mask. Click Luminance. Let me turn on our masking. So you can see everything in red is going to be affected by our changes here, but we don't want that. We only want to be affecting the sky. So grab our eyedropper after we changed our range mask to Luminance and click in the sky. And you can see Lightroom mask off only the bright areas. We can fine tune the mask using the slider here. That looks pretty good. We'll turn off our mask and let's get to work up here. First off, let's warm the sky up a bit. And now let's darken it so we can get some color. And to add even more color, let's bring up the saturation. That helped, but it didn't give me the full effect that I was looking for. So let's try something else. Close our tool, click on the boxes here. Make sure we're on camera matching and go to landscape. We can hover over it to see the effects that it makes. So it brings us more dynamic range and more saturated colors. So this gives us a better starting off point. So let's enable this, close out. So now our sky looks a lot better. Let's do some more fine tuning in the HSL panel. I'm going to start with luminance. Luminance is how bright or how dark a color is. So first off, I'm going to darken up the yellows I see. Next up is green. We have a lot of green here and here, and I really want to accentuate it, so I'm going to brighten it up. And lastly, we have a little bit of magenta and purple in the sky, so let's darken those. After working on luminance, I always go straight to saturation and then adjust the colors that we were just working on. So I'm going to bring orange up a little bit, as well as yellow. Now, since we brightened the green areas, we're going to need to add a lot of saturation back in so we can make them look good. So now we have a nice dark green color, but it's also very bright. It draws your eye in. And let's add some saturation to the sky using purple and magenta. So our water here has some blue color in it, but it's kind of washed out. So let's grab a grad tool, pull it up. Let me turn on the overlay so we can see where we're working. So not only are we affecting the water, we're affecting our foreground rocks here, but we can easily mask that off. Luminance masking. Click on the water, and let's adjust our mask a little bit. That looks good. Spilling over a little bit here, so we can just grab a brush, hold down Alt, turn your brush into an eraser, and we can erase the areas that our mask was spilling over to. So now we just have the water masked off, so we can make some changes here. So I want to make it more blue by bringing down the color temperature. And also we can bring up the saturation to add in some blue. So now we have a little bit more color in our bottom right corner. Next up, let's work on our foreground here. Grab a brush, make sure auto mask is turned on, and let's paint in this area. You can press O to turn on your overlay so you can see where you're working. So we got that all painted in. Press O, let's turn off our overlay. And to bring this area out, I'm just going to use texture. Let's slide that up to right about there. So now we worked on our foreground. We brought in some color here and we brought in some sharpness here. Now let's work on the water that's in this area. Let's grab our radial circle tool, drag it out and over this area. We can adjust it like this. Make sure you have invert checked, so that way we're only working on this area inside. Otherwise you'd be working on all of the area outside. Now I want to bring out the orange color that we already have here, so we can bring the temperature up a little bit and bring the saturation up. That looks good. I'm seeing a little spot over here, so let's grab our spot removal tool. Let's click on visualize spots. Let's remove this little dust spot or whatever it is and fix some of these areas in the sky. So all these little circles are dust. They could have been debris that were on my filter also. I was using a 3-stop soft edge graduated neutral density filter. When you're shooting with a small aperture, you tend to get dust if your sensor isn't perfectly clean. Now let's go down to vignetting. Let's try a little bit of a vignette. Maybe just -5 to help draw our eye in to the middle of the frame. One last thing, I want to work on this lighthouse here. Let's grab a brush and let's paint it in. There's a bit of a blue cast, but it should be white. So let's bring down the saturation until it looks more white. Right there, and let's bring the exposure up a little bit. So let me show you before and after. Here's before, and here's after. So now it'll stick out a little bit more in our scene. If you want something to stick out in your scene, you can add brightness or saturation or texture to it. So in the foreground, we added texture to this element, and back here, we added some brightness. To bring the sky and water out, we added saturation. So I'm really happy with the way this image turned out. It was pretty bland and boring when we started, but now we have some great colors. Always start looking for your composition with the foreground element, so you have something to anchor your image. I don't think this image would be the same without this foreground element. If we just had water all the way across here, we would just be having a boring kind of flat image. Now we have more of a 3D look with our foreground, midground, and then background. I hope you liked this image. If you did, please like and subscribe.